Yes, folks, it is Thursday, the 14th of March. Hard to believe it, but the season and the year are just flying by. And speaking of seasons, a lot of people are paying attention to March Madness. Like I was telling Nick earlier, there was almost a major upset that took place in sports, but it did not happen. DePaul, which is like a three and something team, almost took down Villanova, but it did not happen as they lost on a last second shot, and then were not able to get off their own last second shot. So they lost by a point and all along those lines. But a lot of people said that would have been a shocker that would have sent chills around the Big East tournament world and maybe even around the landscape of basketball in general. But that being said, let's get to some world issues and all along those lines. So definitely the Trump team is to make two arguments in court to see what they can do about some of these classified documents. So definitely, folks are also paying attention to the fact that there will be closures on I-95, likely due to former President Trump attending federal court in Fort Pierce. So a lot of folks might be heading into a traffic jam and all in that space. And the House has passed a bill that could ban TikTok despite resistance from Trump. So last night or late night, they tackled the House bill that could ban TikTok. And it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. And if TikTok is no longer able to be used by a lot of folks in the society and all in that way. But it'll be very interesting to see what goes on in that case. And, a lot of people were talking about this non-binary teen, Nix Benedict, and according to the medical examiner, he died by suicide. So definitely that is what the judgment is that he died by suicide, and definitely it'll be interesting to see what kind of repercussions come out of that particular case as well. So definitely there's a number of things that are going on, including how the charity ship Open Arms is delivering humanitarian aid to Gaza. So definitely that is what is going on. So charity hopes to send a second food aid ship to Gaza in the next few days. So definitely as hunger spreads, donors are seeking private firms to handle the aid. And apparently even in the UK, a new UK extremism policy is raising concerns over free speech. And Govey says Sunni Muslim-led groups and too far right are to be assessed for extremism. So they're going to see whether they are extreme or not. And the UK has redefined extremism after a rise in hate crimes against both Jews and Muslims. So that is something else that we are seeing as well. So definitely a lot of people are paying attention to that, like they're paying attention to the Haiti crisis. So definitely a lot of folks are trying to figure out about Jimmy Cherisier, who is an officer turned gangster. And definitely it might be something going on in that space because folks are asking even who is Barbecue, apparently the gang leader who is wreaking havoc in Haiti. So definitely it looks like calm in the Haitian capital has extended into the second day as the U.S. and UN have withdrawn their staff and all along those kind of ways. Definitely, even in the UK, there's charges about racism. So Diane Abbott has hit out at racism in politics after a whole kind of controversy around donors and all in that way. So apparently, Frank Hester's ugly words about me are a reminder all parties, including Labor, must stand against racism. So definitely, it looks like Diane Abbott even stands to catch the speaker's attention 46 times, and the UK Tories are saying that the top donor made racist remarks about the MP who said Jews don't face racism. So that is something else that we're seeing in the news and all along those lines. And by the way, it looks like Putin is coasting toward another term in power. So definitely the presidential elections are taking place in Russia as well. And Putin has urged Russians to vote at this difficult time for the country. And China responds to Putin's nuclear weapons warning. So the Kremlin claims Putin made no threats about the U.S. The use of nuclear weapons in his interview. But according to Forbes, Putin says Russia is ready for nuclear war if its existence or independence is threatened. But Politico says that Putin's nuke threat isn't worrying the U.S. So that is something else that we are seeing as well. And apparently, Johnson is signaling a shift on Ukraine to GOP senators. So the lawmakers began efforts to move around Johnson and force a vote on Ukraine aid. So the House Speaker has been urged to act on the Ukraine aid bill. As a matter of fact, some folks are saying lead, follow, or get out of the way. So House Democrats are trying to bypass Speaker Johnson to force a vote on Ukraine aid. So that is something else that we are seeing in the news, and a lot of people are paying attention to that as well. And of course, the looks like the UK will be banning foreign state ownership of newspapers. So definitely that is something else going on. So the Britain's conservative establishment has fought off a foreign media takeover, and the UK government says it will back legislation to ban foreign state ownership of British newspapers. So if Nick Palveda or Kim Calhoun are planning to buy any newspaper in that particular part of the world, they might not be able to do it since they are doing some things to kind of curtail that and all along those lines. And a gunman who kidnapped 287 school children in Nigeria says they will kill them all if a 622,000 ransom is not paid. So there are some school children that have been kidnapped, 287, and apparently they are threatened to kill them all unless that large chunk of money is paid, $622,000 in that space. And according to the High Court in Japan, Japan's same-sex marriage bar is unconstitutional. So, I mean, ban. So definitely the folks are saying that Japan's same-sex marriage ban is unconstitutional in that part of the world. And I'm sure folks will be paying attention to that as well and trying to see how it plays out in that whole conversation and what goes on in that way. So definitely there'll be some talks in that space as well. And AI created election disinformation is deceiving the world. So apparently that's something else going on. And as I get ready to bring in Rick and all along those lines, I know he's a person that's been warning us about AI, but apparently deep fakes in an election year. And folks are asking, is Asia ready to handle the misinformation campaigns? And some folks are wondering whether deepfake AI content will influence the 2024 election, not just here in the United States, but around the world. So secretaries of state are worrying about AI impersonating them. So definitely some folks are worrying about the notion of AI impersonating folks as well. And by the way, speaking of elections in Portugal and election results in uncertainty and the rise of the far right. So apparently the far right is definitely taking hold in that part of the world. So Chega's Andre Ventura is Europe's new far right figure. So folks are looking at that. And definitely folks are also paying attention to why Ireland is one of the most pro-Palestinian nations in the world. So definitely a lot of folks are paying attention to that. And even the European lawmakers, coming back to AI, they have passed a new rule as well. So definitely it looks like they have passed some laws around what they're going to do with AI and all in that space. So definitely the European lawmakers passed an AI Act, the world's first comprehensive AI law, and it is supposed to be a major act to regulate AI, and it's been passed by European lawmakers and all in that space. So, like I said, going to bring in some of my folks, including Rick Rosner. I know I've got Zasha Star, and who knows, Nick may be joining us as well. So, definitely, I know that you've been concerned about some AI stuff and all along those lines. I do have to say that I think coming up, and Nick, you're going to love this, but Tulsa Gabbard, I believe is her name, as well as Jesse Ventura, speaking of independence and all along those lines, they may be getting a new job title, as it is the possibility that Aaron Rodgers may have the title as well, because apparently on the same day that Biden and Harris will be visiting North Carolina, RFK Jr., who is running as a third party candidate. I know that we've got some people here with no labels that are supposed to be running a third party candidate, but he's supposed to be announcing on the 26th for his VP and everything. And those are some of the names that he has thrown out there. He has said that he's been talking to Jesse Ventura, Aaron Rodgers, and Tulsi Gabbard as potential VPs. So what are our thoughts about RFK and his third party run and the fact that he's going to give us a VP nomination?
Well, he's a knucklehead, a lunatic, a guy who's abusing either testosterone or HGH at the age of 70. If you've seen him running around shirtless, I don't think we need a guy on steroids being in charge of our nuclear arsenal. Of the three candidates, Aaron Rodgers is an anti-vax idiot. Jesse Ventura seems to be a fairly reasonable guy. Tulsi Gabbard's a hack. It's mostly knuckleheads.
It's kind of amazing that when these people hit the stage, Mark, they they show up who they really are. Interesting though that Chris Greco had a show on the Pod TV network called Worldview, going over the odds of third parties winning. Well, here's the real problem: the last person who did well, besides Ross Perot, before that was Teddy Roosevelt, who got 27% of the vote. But he still lost. And so the thing is, the history of third parties, unfortunately, is a history of losing. So if you have a chance, you want to catch him on the Pod TV network, Worldview with Chris Greco, a really good commentary. But I would give him slim to none, as David Walker would say, Robert Kennedy, slim to none to win anything. And Slim had just left the room. So go figure. It's kind of a waste of time. So I guess what we're really looking at, whether we like it or not, is a Trump versus Biden rematch. And This is going to be the realities of it. I do want to make a comment, though, on TikTok ban.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I want to do that, I'm listening to the major media looking for the smoking gun. What exactly did China do that's wrong? And you know what? There wasn't anything. In other words, there's nothing. It's quite possible that the other media companies, and I'm talking social media, Facebook, Google, by using lobbyists, are behind this law to get rid of TikTok. Because if you think about it, why are people moving over to TikTok? Why do we have the commentators? Mainly because they get paid more, because Google, through their YouTube subsidiary, stiffs people. Facebook is horrible. And if you want to talk about people taking your information and destroying you, and destroying all the entrepreneurs out there that are trying to make a living off that, Facebook is one of them. So if you're going to ban TikTok, I'd say you got to ban Facebook also. They're owned by hacks in San Francisco. So why not get rid of them? So what is the smoking gun with TikTok other than the fear of the McCarthy age, where they're communists,
being from China,
the fear of China. Come on, Mark. See, that's the problem. We had this in the 50s with McCarthy. The fear of communism. We went to the Vietnam War because the fear of communism. Now we have this fear of China, but there's no smoking gun. So I think the American public needs to wake up and until I get a smoking gun.
Well, speaking of smoking guns,
I'd throw this law off the door. First Amendment.
Well, speaking of smoking guns, you heard me mention it earlier and everything, that apparently in the UK there is this notion that foreign individuals cannot own media in the UK. And I was thinking about that. Doesn't Robert Murdoch, who is from England, own some properties here in the United States?
He's from Australia. I think he became a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, he is.
He went around the system, but see, if you look at this is a fear-based law. It's not and Congress. There's no smoking gun in the Ukraine bill. There is a smoking gun. Mark, not only smoking gun, there's real guns. None of that. There are real people dying, and they didn't pass a Ukraine bill to fund Ukraine. Okay. So why are they going after TikTok when there is no smoking gun, when there is a real gun with the Russians in Ukraine, and we're ignoring it? There's only one answer. It's money in Washington, D.C. through Facebook, Google, and some of our distribution
Trump's
partners.
Treasury Secretary says he's trying to put together a group of investors to buy TikTok, which makes people worried that it will become a right-wing a megaphone,
or it becomes a left wing. See, we don't know what wing it becomes, but it's got to be an American left or right wing. Either it becomes a left wing Facebook, or it becomes a right wing Twitter, which is now known as X. But what they're not allowing is an independent TikTok to exist, and I believe this is based on the media companies in California, your state, Rick, that want to control all the distribution sources in the world and what we think and do. And so the best way to get rid of your competition is make it illegal. Best way to do that is to go to Washington, D.C., fear communists are coming. And
speaking of the communist coming,
just to point out now,
quick,
it'll be wrong 10 years
Nick,
from now. It'll be wrong when they do the McCarthy
Nick,
hearings. Now you need to have the TikTok hearing.
Nick,
Yeah,
just to point out, there are issues with TikTok and China owning TikTok. Just like how if you go on TikTok and say anything about Tiananmen Square, you'll get banned.
So what? Come on,
That is an issue. That is a government entity controlling the actual information. You know how many
times I've been kicked off Facebook for no reason? I don't give a rat's rear. The people
Nick,
in
you're not listening. I get all your issues with Facebook.
The people in Beijing.
I understand the issues.
Don't hand me that pile.
I understand your issues that you're saying with Facebook, but to point out the fact that you're saying that Facebook is left wing, it's actually not. It's actually a group of individuals. You can laugh all you want. Look it up. Look actually at the individuals that they hired as the ones who are monitoring Facebook. They are not left-wing individuals that you are claiming they are. Just like how we put out information saying that, oh, well, the media is owned by the left wing. That's incorrect. Most of the media is actually owned by right-wing individuals. These are just facts that I'm just spitting because you can actually look them up. So then on top of the Tiananmen Square thing, getting banned for having a country, an actual government entity banning you for saying things that the government does not like. I get your point about, hey, being left-wing or right-wing.
They do it all the time in California.
Twitter is mainly a right-wing entity right now because of what Elon Musk feels can and cannot be on his actual platform. That goes for any social media platform. But the thing is, there's a problem with a government entity controlling the actual flow, and that is the problem that's going on. It's not a matter of, oh no, we must fear. No, it's actually a real thing, and they can actually do things that can create harm and an issue. So that's just the reality of the situation.
I still haven't seen the smoking gun. Maybe Sasha's got the gun.
No, I just told you.
No,
I did. You just don't
buy any of your arguments, Counselor.
I told you a fact that a governmental entity blocked and banned people for saying anything about their government.
They do it in San Francisco all the time. I don't give a rat's rear there.
I know you don't because you don't believe it. You're looking for some smoking gun, but you don't understand what a smoking gun is.
If you don't bring a smoking gun to the table, baby,
I brought you a smoking gun.
No, you brought it.
Enough, everybody. I will bring about a government right away. Okay, here is a smoking gun.
Yeah.
Trump, for a long time, he was advocating to ban TikTok immediately. Ban it. It's owned by Chinese. Just get out. Forbid it for the next 500 years. 3 days ago, he had a meeting with one of the investors, the biggest investors in TikTok. And because Trump is for sale now, his guy badly needs money. So after that meeting, all of a sudden he changed his mind. He said, well, you know what? The Facebook is probably also not right, and we have to be careful about it. And you know what? Maybe TikTok is not so bad after all. So this idiot changed his mind in a matter of 24 hours, and he wanted all his puppies in the Congress also to change their mind and change it and vote to keep TikTok and not ban it. But you know what? Enough is enough. How much you can take people for granted that they're puppets, complete idiots, and will do everything what one guy tells them to do. It didn't work. So there is a great rift in the Republican Party where a majority no longer wants to follow blindly whatever Trump tells them to do. This is a smoking gun. This is the most important issue. TikTok is really nothing. Okay, so TikTok, so they will say they will change few shareholders. They will become American shareholders and Chinese shareholders. I don't think that TikTok will disappear in the United States. It will be there. There will be some changes in ownership or so, maybe artificial, maybe real changes. It doesn't matter. What matters is that Trump is losing grip on Republican Party. Nobody is touching him. He has no money. He has to come up with $500 million in a matter of less than 2 weeks. And nobody wants him. Nobody wants to touch him. And all the wealthy donors left him alone when they see that Biden raised right after the State of the Union address. He raised $30 million in a matter of hour and a half. On the other hand, RCN runs out of money. They fired 60 employees and they're in complete disarray. There will be no money, never mind paying Trump's legal bills, which will go on forever, by the way. There is no money even for elections, not presidential, not governors, not Senate, not House, nothing. That spells the end of Republican Party the way it is construed now. They have to do great changes. They have to get rid of Trumpism and they have to build a real party.
Speaking of building a real party and everything, I just had a question because I know we've talked about it before, but there's this notion, not just in the United States, but around the world, of people working together and working across the aisles. I know that in Canada, where you are, Sasha, there's a notion of coalition government and everything like that. And apparently the fine folks in Netherlands have having some problems with that because Geert Wilders is saying he's going to forgo becoming the Dutch prime minister. And he says it is constitutionally wrong that he had to sacrifice his leadership ambitions as they are trying to, and folks are saying he's willing to forego the premiership in a bid for coalition. So is this coalition effort going to work in the Netherlands? Does coalitions ever work and all along those lines? So I just wanted your take, because apparently this gentleman, Geert Wilders, is saying, that's all right, I won, but I'm going to forgo becoming the Dutch prime minister because I can't get the support that I need.
I mean,
Well,
yeah,
let's not all speak at once, because that's the Netherlands, which is a tiny little country in Europe.
6 million
This is the
people or
United
something,
States.
yeah.
How many live there, Rick?
I'm guessing 6 million. We've got like 55 times as many people.
Yeah,
as
I mean, the
Netherlands.
state of North Carolina has more of a population than the Netherlands, so it's really it's not going to happen. As we discussed before, we are sworn to two parties. We are not a country of independent thought. We're trained from birth to go one direction or the other, and we're trained from birth not to listen to the other side.
But,
so that's the United States of America. It has nothing to do.
Nick, along those same lines, and
You
that's why
disagree? Toby, have you ever talked to a Republican? Have you ever changed their mind? Come on, Toby. Show me one Republican who changed their mind. Toby, you've been rapping for years. Show me one you've changed their mind. Talk. Tell me one. Give me one name.
The show I have at night is me, a liberal, arguing with Lance, a conservative. I've yet to change his mind in 7 years on anything.
Yeah, and we even had a show with Jimmy
Have you
called
changed
Change Your
the
Mind.
flat earthers'
It went
mind?
off the air.
Have you changed
your
an
mind went off the air because
anti-vaxxer's
you don't
mind?
change people's
Have you
minds.
changed somebody who's dug into their own ideas?
Yeah, you haven't changed
their
anybody's mind. Just admit it.
It's not a matter that you're trained to go this way or that way. You find something that you tie yourself to, and yes, you dig into your own personal beliefs. Have you changed the mind of a Baptist to become what? Have you changed the mind of a no? If you tie yourself to a rooted belief, you're going to believe that regardless.
But
That's
one
one of those things. And it does take time. You can't actually get through those rooted beliefs. For example,
No, you can't.
There actually is a black gentleman who travels around and talks to diehard Klans members. And actually,
Are you
there was
talking
a
about
dude
Mark
who actually
Robinson? Are you talking about Mark
really
Robinson?
good friends with a dude with another young individual who was a diehard Klans member, and he no longer does. Robert Byrd used to be the Grand Wizard of a Klansman, but then he started working on the civil rights movement because he left the Grand Wizard. And so you can change those diehard beliefs and those but we get into the ideals that Nick wants to believe that, oh, I must hate you because you're that side. It doesn't work that way. No, you just got to talk to people. Conversation is where the key is.
But tell me, that's the reason I brought up the thing with the Netherlands, and I brought up the other part of the world because we are the world edition, and that's why I went with a couple of world thoughts and everything. But part of what is going on is there has been a push, or people have said that there has been a push toward extremism in politics. I also mentioned another small country, Portugal, and they apparently elected a far right leader. So are we finding that around the world people are getting stuck in their ways and ingrained in their ways and are either going too far to the right or too far to the left? And I mean, sometimes it might even be gang members like in Haiti that are trying to run countries. But are we finding people that are ingrained in their political ideology, whatever that political ideology is?
Jacoby went south on you, or he froze up, so he doesn't have any real comments on that. But if you want to say extremism, Mark, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I mean, I think it's always been with us. I mean, it's always it was always with us, always will be with us. It's not going to change. Jacoby gave us a couple examples where people did over a period of 80 years change their mind. But I think in this election, who's going to make the decision? It won't be the Republicans and it won't be the Democrats, because they're all going to be entrenched in their own individual camps. It will be the independent voters. In other words, the people that tend to switch parties, they're the ones who are really going to make the difference. And it's going to come down to certain key states. Forget California. It's the left coast. They're going with the Democrats. Forget Oregon. Oregon is so far left. I think they're part of China.
No, but
we've been evenly divided between parties, and for the last time of any presidential candidate got more than 53% of the vote was 1988.
Yeah.
Even Reagan, who won 49 out of 50 states in his second election, only got 58% of the vote. I mean,
yeah. But California and the left West Coast is all going to go with the Democrats. I mean, Trump ain't going to bother to go out and campaign there. It's going to come down to the key swing states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, even North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and it's where those key states are going to go is going to determine the election. And that's one reason our friend Joe Biden is coming to North Carolina, is because we're a purple state.
Hold on a second, Nick. Where did Reagan come out of and everything? Because
Reagan came out of California,
definitely from the right that have come out of California.
Decades ago.
Reagan became president in 1981, so 43 years.
Let's bring Jacoby back in, because we need Jacoby, because this way we can swim in a sea of knowledge as opposed to drowning in a bay of ignorance. So Jacoby can shed us light.
I missed it. There was a dip in the in Google
internet. Yeah. Okay. You know why it was a dip?
So from what I gather at the end of
it was a dip to you because China is mad at you because you're anti-TikTok. That's
sure.
The reason why.
So from what I gather with talking about Reagan being a Republican, was Nick saying that no Republicans going to come out of California?
He was basically saying that California is a lost cause because of it being a Democratic stronghold. And I was saying that Reagan came out of California. I think there have been some others that came out of California.
Here's a question. Why is he considering, just because California is highly educated, has, yes, is a Democrat stronghold. So why is that a quote unquote lost cause, but Texas isn't? Texas is a Republican stronghold. Why can't that be a lost cause? Why are we
Texas keeps getting more purple? Texas in the past has had Democratic governors. LBJ,
LBJ was out of there, and Richards was out of Texas.
What about Alabama? Why isn't Alabama? Why is he only considering a Democrat stronghold a quote unquote lost cause, but he's not considering a Republican stronghold a lost cause? I don't get the balancing act on that one.
Yeah. Well, speaking of balancing act,
I mean, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger. You still have some Republican. There is actually a Republican. Is it a House rep that's
there's quite a few
California? Yeah. So there are individuals that have some conservative views. Truthfully, we all have the same idea, but it's just how we get there. And some of the policies that are put forth by the Republican Party just aren't policies that are attractive to the populace or to the educated populace.
Well, not only that, Jacoby. One of the things I would add to what you're saying is that just like in North Carolina, there are certain parts of the state that are strongly Democratic. I would argue that definitely Durham is one of those, and I would say that to some degree, Greensboro is, and maybe even Charlotte, even though I think there's some conservative voices in Charlotte as well. But I do know that the places that California is known for in terms of Silicon Valley and in terms of the Hollywood and the music industry and a number of other things like LA and San Francisco and some of the big cities are definitely very Democratic based and everything. But that is a very big state. So I do know that there are some parts of California that are more conservatively leaning, and there are even some parts of that state that have even voted heavily Republican. So that's why I think that
overall California is about 2/3 Democratic.
Right.
But the Republican Senate candidate Steve Garvey pulled close to as many votes in the primary as Adam Schiff, the Dem. He won't win in the general, but I mean, there are probably 10 million Republicans in California, which is more than the populations of half our states.
Exactly. And everything. Speaking of that, and I was just going to bring up something that was a more positive note, because we often now talk about the division in the world, including what we were just talking about with China. But apparently there was a boat that capsized off of Taiwan, and actually the fine folks in both Taiwan and China joined forces. So they actually worked together to try to find a way to deal with this and everything. So both the mainland Chinese and Taiwanese Coast Guards saved the capsized fishing boat crew. So we do have definitely regular cases, whether it's in that part of the world or other parts of the world, where sworn enemies find a common cause and are able to get past whatever their disagreements are and find a common cause to work around and everything. So definitely that is a positive news coming out of the Asian population.
Well, I have more positive news tonight on Jeopardy. They're doing the finals again. And as you can see on the screen, that's my trivia team I was playing with. This is before Ken Jennings became Ken Jennings. Right after he had won, he was between jobs. And so I called him up and had him play on our trivia team. And of course, with Ken Jennings on your team, you win because he's really good when it comes to trivia. And there's my friend Drew. And you notice it's the Pension Professors is the name of the team. I got him play for my corporate team. But tonight there's the finals. If you haven't seen it, there's 3 good players, a professor, a PhD in psychology, and this guy who's a music executive. The guy who's the music executive is a killer. Troy Meyer from Tampa, Florida, my hometown. Killer. Good games. You get to watch masters at the games and grandmasters play as opposed to watch regular people. So that's my plug for tonight.
I like that plug and everything. Speaking of that, Lee Newton Rhodes asked a good question. Lee Newton Rhodes, who's in the background, was asking
Jeopardy.
Politicians who flip-flop. That's not news. That's not news. That's why politicians or people despise politicians. I've said several times on this show that I feel that both Obama and Trump are kind of the folks that are we're going against, quote unquote, the establishment, and that's why they both have had success and all in that space. But I just wonder y'all's thoughts around what Lee Newton Rhodes has said, which is politicians regularly flip-flop, and that's why a lot of people around the world are not the biggest fans of politicians in general.
See, flip-flop is really a bad word. It's what happens as they evolve. It's like what Jatovia is saying. In other words, people start looking at things different and they change their mind because of things. It happens in science all the time. But the problem is people go, oh, it's a flip-flop. No, you have different information. You have different information, you change your mind and you go a different direction, moron. It's like if Sasha all of a sudden says, no more NVIDIA stock. Well, why? Because he gets different information, the stock's overpriced, he decides not to go with NVIDIA. Some moron out there, which are most people who listen to this stuff, is going to say, oh, he flip-flopped. It's not a flip-flop. It's with getting different information, you make a different decision. Yes, Rick?
Our system is set up for flip-flopping in that you get elected by winning your party primary. The people who show up to vote in primaries are farther they're the extremist members of your party. So for the first few months of a campaign, you have to win over the extremists. Then once you win your primary, you have to win over the rest of everybody else. So you have to move to the center.
Right. And you're correct.
also Democrats have a huge incentive to move to and a historical tendency to move to the center if their approval is low. Clinton had low approval in his first term. He moved to the center to grab more independence. His approval went up hugely. And you see Biden doing the same thing with immigration to try to win back the center.
There are two things, though, that one, move to the center, but because of the extreme right that has been put out there, the center has actually moved a little bit more. What historically used to be the center has now moved a little bit more to the right. And it's easier for the Democrats to move to the center than it is for the Republicans to move to the center at this moment because of the extremities that they've gone to. But I think what Lee's point is going to isn't really more the general term of flip-flopping. I think it's more so dealing with the pandering flip-flopping, because when he added in the comment about donations, and yes, that is a problem where it becomes a pandering situation, which one of the prime examples of pandering is Donald Trump and the actual GOP, and the way that, for example, Donald Trump went to a Black conference or Black conservative conference and pandered and talked about he went to the shoe conference to pander to Black people about, hey, guess what? I've got some shoes. Dude, I've been wanting to put these shoes out for a long time. No, you didn't. You got some crazy idea that you wanted to pander to Black people because you knew your numbers with Black people are in the tank. So what you did, you go to some shoe conference and talk about shoes, which nobody wanted and nobody cared about. And then you claim that, oh, well, you've been meaning to do this for a long time. No, you didn't. Then you go to the Black conservative conference and do the same exact thing, but only talk to white people. You didn't talk to any Black people. And then you put out AI photos of you hanging out with Black people. You didn't talk to or do any. That's pandering. That is the epitome of the whole flip-flop and pandering thing.
But Trump is bad at pandering because Trump has very flexible or no political beliefs. When he became president, he could have pandered to the center, to the majority of Americans, but no, he pandered to the far right, and he's continued to pretty much do that, which limits his approval to 40%.
Yeah, speaking of pandering,
but now let's talk a little about the left pandering and payoffs. Here it is. You can find it. It's called the budget of the U.S. government. First of all, when you're in school, no one ever presents the budget of the U.S. government. It's probably the most important document in your life. It represents 25% of all the money that you have in your pocket or will be taken from you by the federal government. This is a major document that isn't presented in major media. By the way, you can find it on the internet. You got to search for it. It's 188 pages, and it goes through every little place where the government is squandering their money or they're being paid off by lobbyists so that they get money from Elon Musk, who gets his money from for basically putting electronic charging stations around the country through internet companies so that they don't have to pay to have the internet installed. The government pays, and which means you pay. Everybody is paying them so they get to keep their stock prices up. To NVIDIA so that they get money to build silicon chips so that Sasha can siphon off more money. It is the ultimate. Now, here's the real problem. It's not balanced. What happens is if you look at it, your friend Joe is going to spend 1.7 trillion more than he takes in. If you look at more carefully, our federal deficit is going to rise to $50 trillion because Uncle Joe doesn't have his head together.
Hey, Nick,
And then
hold on a
if you
second.
look at
Hold on a second, Nick.
Generalities.
Hold on a second, Nick.
Please
Because
don't
you're
talk to
putting
me
this on
unless
the
you've read
Democrats.
this.
Why?
Please don't
That's the
talk to me
question.
unless you've read this.
No.
If you haven't read this, you have
Nick,
no reason
honestly,
to talk.
you're not actually doing it justice because you're talking in generalities, saying absolutely nothing but
talking in
fear mongering over a
specifics.
budget. For example, when you talk about NVIDIA, what is NVIDIA's focus? And also, does the CHIPS
Making
Act
money.
actually
That's-
do
that's
more
Sasha.
for all the companies that are making chips for the market? And what are those benefits for the market?
Counselor.
What are the jobs?
Counselor, have you
in
read this
terms of Elon
document?
Musk, you said, "Oh, Elon only gets his money from just putting up electric, the
No, he's having
car
us put
electric
up this
grid."
money.
You know
We're
what?
making
First
them
and
rich,
foremost,
Counselor.
what has SpaceX done? SpaceX actually gets a lot of
SpaceX
money,
gets
and
money
actually
from the government
SpaceX
through
does a lot of
NASA,
stuff,
Counselor.
the heavy
Counselor,
lifting, because
have
we've
you
taken a
read
lot of
this
money out of
document?
NASA. And you know where we get a lot of our products from? NASA. So therefore, when you talk about
Yeah.
these things, let's talk educated
Counselor.
and not talk generalities because you hate the budget.
Counselor, have you read this document?
Read it to me.
I
Show
don't
me.
hear an overwhelming yes.
If you're going to
Okay,
read,
so-
if you're
so what
going
you're
to
doing is
talk
you're just
about it, then
speaking out of your
educate me
mouth
on the
rather than
budget
saying,
and do
yes,
not
yes,
just
sir,
talk
I've read
in
the document.
generalities.
And yes, I've seen the
No,
problem. If you haven't
Nick,
read the
Nick, hold on a
document, you
second.
haven't
Nick,
seen the
Nick,
problem.
hold on a
You're
second.
not educating me. You're just
Nick, hold on a
saying
second.
words that you hate about the
We
budget.
can go through this.
Nick, hold on a
We can
second.
go through this.
Because I was admit I have not read the document, but you made it seem as if it is
Read
a
it.
Democratic problem and everything. When, as far as I know, there have been both Democrats and Republicans that have not balanced the budget. So it is a
That's correct.
across the board problem
And
and
then-
everything. So it is not just a Democratic problem.
And Mark, just to actually add more facts to what you're saying, under Democrat presidents, the actual budget is much more balanced. Under Republican presidents, the budget is blown out of the water. So that is actually a fact. So when you're talking about,
That is
quote unquote,
correct.
Uncle Joe is actually doing better for the budget than Donald Trump would have, who just in his past 4 years put 25% on that budget. So again,
That is
let's
correct.
not talk about generalities. If you're going to educate everybody on the budget, let's talk about the budget itself and what's in it, and not just, hey, this is the budget. Have you read it?
Giveaways to all sorts of groups and individuals. I mean, it's
What's
the
a giveaway?
ultimate- It's not a pay. It's not
What's a giveaway? Generality doesn't work.
payoff.
No,
So,
hold on
you
a
know,
second. Speaking of
hold on,
giveaways,
let me-
hold on a second. Speaking of giveaways, because I got to get to another part of the world. First, I want to ask people about a part of another small country, because we are the world edition. So I like to find interesting news from around the world and everything. But apparently, the small country of Denmark is planning to conscript women for military service for the first time. So they're planning to expand the military draft to women and extend service times and all along those lines. So I'm just wondering, what is our thoughts about this notion of women? Because I do know that women are in the military in the United States and in other parts of the world as well. As a matter of fact, I think there are some women probably serving in both the Ukrainian and the Russian militaries as well. But apparently Denmark, which used to be a relatively neutral country, is going to be conscripting and drafting their women into military service. So they just
Israel's done men and women for decades. Maybe as long as it's been. I mean, modern warfare isn't just like, slogging through jungles and trenches and
You're pressing buttons.
Yeah, but to get back to the budget,
Women are good at pressing buttons.
Voters prefer what the Democrats spend on when they break the budget than what the Republicans spend on. Republicans have won the popular vote for president just one time since 1988.
Hey, come on, Rick. We know that modern warfare. See, you're right. We don't beat each other with our hands or take. Instead, all we have to do is press buttons. You press a button and boom, you blow something up. Women are good at pressing buttons, Mark. Okay, I know that. So the thing is, because all you have to do is press
down to
buttons, why not bring
misogyny
them into
roll
the
now.
military? What? You know that? Come on, Jacoby. Have you ever seen The View? Okay, this is like the male version of The View. Let's just.
I mean, I didn't know we were going down.
If you look at The
But,
View,
like,
all those
Denmark
women are
is,
great on ABC pressing buttons. Okay, so to draft women into the military, no problem. They're good at pressing buttons. Say, what does that button do? It blows things up. What does that button do? Well, it sends missiles across the world. So go ahead and draft
all
them.
the
It's not
little
that hard.
countries in that region are beefing up their militaries because they're all within a couple hundred miles of Russia.
Well, that's
Yeah,
one of the things I was going to get to, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I was going to go to Sasha, because apparently I know we were trying to get money in the United States to Ukraine, but the EU just gave an initial backing of 5 billion pounds weapons fund for Ukraine. So definitely there's this whole notion of the nuclear rhetoric that Russia is given. But will that $5 billion help Ukraine go ahead and win this war,
Everyone
which is
knows.
now going to go into its third or fourth year and
The
everything.
EU
So,
has
so what is
given
your take on the EU giving 5.5 billion pounds to be $5.5 billion?
the EU has given more than $150 billion to Ukraine. The US has given 73 billion, so more than double from the EU compared to us.
Well, what you can see, you see that one man with his puppies completely blocked help of the United States to Ukraine, except that Joe Biden just found another $300 million. And there is also the fund that he can administer without any agreement with Congress. It's about $4 billion available. And in the meantime, hopefully the deadlock will be overcome, because it seems to me that Trump is becoming irrelevant, and even his puppies no longer willing to listen to his 100% of lies.
Hey,
And
Sasha, if I could just interrupt you really quickly and everything, what do you say to those folks that hear this kind of money? Because we're talking billions of dollars, and they are looking outside and they see homeless people. I know that Rick has homeless people where he's at in California. We definitely see them, me, Jacoby, and Nick in North Carolina, and they're going like, that's a whole lot of money going to Ukraine, and I could use that to have a job or have a house if I don't have a house and everything along those lines. So I just wonder, what is your answer to those folks that is one of their complaints about this kind of money?
I have an answer to this, folks. I do.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine is keeping Russian aggressors away from Europe and from necessary actions from the United States. If they will attack NATO countries, most likely it will be Baltic states, perhaps Poland. Although Poland is not easy thing for Russia to crush, as they see they got stuck by Ukraine, and Poland would offer even more resistance and probably will crush Russia and will take over Moscow. But
I have an answer for. I have an answer for you.
Hold on, I haven't finished yet.
Right.
The homeless people are not providing that what Ukraine provides to the West. They are homeless, give them apartments of some kind, and a year and a half, they will be homeless again. So there is no absolute purpose and nothing to even think about it. Those homeless people, yes, they can be helped. But unless they want to help themselves, it's not going to work. And there is very little evidence that the homeless people are able to help themselves. Very simple.
Ukraine is an easy problem to solve with money. You send them weapons with your money. They fight Russia. Homeless, it's hard to figure out a solution. Like Sasha says, that it's you can't necessarily. There are not as many easy fixes to homeless. You can't just throw money at the problem.
Here's the thing. You can do both, but your president right now is spending money on corporate welfare, too busy spending money putting these EV stations around the country. Your president is spending too much money giving
so
money rather than
the infrastructure. The infrastructure bill,
internet connections all over the place, rather than spending money for homeless people.
So the infrastructure. Hold on.
The president is wasting his money on
the infrastructure bill. Has some stuff in it that you don't like.
That's what's going on. So what you need to do is vote the bum out, get another bum in, which is what's going to happen.
This is the first bill. So the bill has stuff in it. The $1 trillion infrastructure bill has spending in it you don't like, but this is the first infrastructure spending bill since December of 2015 under Obama. And our roads and bridges get, like when you grade them, they get a D- because they're falling apart. So we do need infrastructure spending, even if you don't agree with everything that's in that bill.
So that's right. But there's the answer to actually build homes rather than throw it away, which is what Biden is doing.
The answer to the question that you're trying to give that individual who's wanting to help, who wants to help the homeless and doesn't want to help Ukraine, is the actual first few words Nick said but then he rambled off some craziness that goes against what he just said. So the answer actually to the question is yes, we can do both. There's enough in the budget that can be done. We've given money in terms of aid to other countries for decades, years, ever since this country was born. We've given money to other countries to help because it is a global. We are a global society now, and we've got to help our allies. So we can do both in terms of helping those in Ukraine, which are needed because that situation itself, Ukraine is an ally, and if they fall, then that leaves other nations that are close to Russia that Putin is trying to take over, from Poland, Sweden on, they're going to be next. And that is the saddest part. So Ukraine is imperative to be protected because they're our ally. In terms of the homeless situation, that can be helped as well. The stuff in the infrastructure bill, that is truly a jobs bill, fixing the roads, even putting up the EV grid. Those are jobs. Those are things that we can actually put towards individuals that need help, because what these individuals, a lot of the homeless individuals need is a job, is financial literacy, which is great because we can actually work with the banks to put up financial literacy education that's there. There is a multi-pronged approach to deal with the homeless situation. And the infrastructure bill, yes, is part of that, which actually does put money in the communities that are building these EV stations and so on and so forth. So the answer is we can do both. And yes, the infrastructure bill and other bills that this current president wants to use and wants to do will help those situations. Sadly, the Republican Party wants to not only let Putin take over Ukraine, they also will end up letting China take over the Ukraine or take over Taiwan. They will also let Russia take over the Baltic states. They will also let Russia take over whatever, because the Republican Party, the group that evidently Nick keeps pushing, either Republican Party or even the No Labels group, want to allow for particular things to happen that are antithetical to what we're actually wanting to do. Because again, we can do both. And we need to do both.
Just really quickly. Hold on a second. Just really quickly, because Nick brought it up. He's brought it up several times, and I know that you're in this lane. What is your answer to Nick when he says that we do not need internet for all? Because definitely that is something that Nick keeps putting out there, is that internet for all is not needed. And I'm actually a proponent of bringing internet even to the rural areas. But I know that you have also done some work in that field. So I'd love to hear your answer as to Nick's counter argument that we are wasting money when we are trying to bring internet to rural North Carolina or rural Idaho or any of the other rural places.
Just to point out, because Nick keeps saying that, and I'll let Rick jump in right after this, but the fact of the matter is that and I'm actually having to do a study on this because, as a matter of fact, or do a lot of the study work on this because of the fact that I'm trying to build an arena to give access to kids that do not have access to technology and computers. So there was a study that was done back in 2019 that talked about, for example, 8th grade test scores and levels. And it even pointed out the fact that Massachusetts has some of the highest levels of test scores across our country. The 8th graders who did not have access to technology were at least 4 to 6 months behind students that had access to computers and technology. So so essentially, yes, we need to somehow get access to not only the kids, because that increases their level of education. And we keep talking about, we want our populace to be educated. Well, this is one way to get education to them. We have to edit it. The internet is an imperative part of our society. We have AI coming, and we have kids that don't even understand the basics of computing.
We need an educated populace to maintain technological superiority. The U.S.'s position in the world, among others, is at least in part due to an education push we had in the 60s when we freaked out about Sputnik. So yeah, we need this current election is non-dumb shits versus dumb shits. many parts of the modern GOP want people to be ignorant. And we need to fight it. And to go back to Ukraine for 1 sec, we've spent $220 per American on Ukraine, which is cheap to hold off World War III and to hold off Russia from reconstituting the Soviet Union.
Oh, and I apologize about my number. It was wrong. It was 8th graders without computer or internet access are on average 27 months behind their peers who have access. So not only with what Rick is saying is true, but also, again, I just wanted to reiterate that is complaining about internet everywhere is saying, hey, we want people to be dumb.
Speaking of which,
It has nothing to do with people who are dumb. People are smart.
It's a
and
fact.
dumb with or
I just
without
gave
the
you some
internet.
numbers.
I mean, this
Can you dispute the numbers, Nick?
A government function,
Nick,
not a
can
government
you
function
dispute the
to
numbers?
provide internet for
Nick,
all. That is
can you
private
dispute the
industry
numbers
function.
that I just stated?
That is private industry function. Okay.
Can you dispute
I don't
the
dispute
numbers
the
that-
numbers. Here's what I
Nick,
do dispute. That
so you
people are
can't
ignorant
dispute my
because
numbers.
of the internet.
So you cannot dispute my
I
numbers.
lived without the internet.
Should
I went
the-
to college
If
without
the
it.
government, if
Come
one
on,
of the-
Jacoby.
if one
Come
of
on.
the primary purposes of the
That's the reason
government
Trump's going
is-
to be elected.
if one of the primary purposes of the government is to make sure our society itself is what's the preamble say? Can you quote the preamble of life, liberty, and justice for all?
Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, but
yeah,
not the
so
pursuit of mega death.
if you are the government, is one of your main purposes education? Yes, because we do have an education department. So if one of your main purposes is education, and we know for a fact investments in education lead to higher amount, higher boosts in our economy. That's one of the biggest things is educational investments, but we tend to cut all the time. So if education is one of our main focuses, and actually proven in every other country how educated they are, how their economy jumps. So education is one of our main purposes. So if we want an educated populace, what are we going to have to do? We got to get technology. We got to get internet in front of all these people, because as a fact that I've just pointed to you, that kids in 8th grade, and they only go further. So in 4th grade, they're 14 months behind, 14 months behind and 9 months behind, 14 months behind in reading, 9 months behind in math. It only grows because in 8th grade, you're at 27 months, and it only keeps going higher and higher. So if we're saying that we want an educated populace, and you say, oh, well, we can't have internet for everybody or access for everybody, that causes a big problem in our education system, which is what you are trying to help.
It's not a government function.
Education is not a government function now.
Internet for all. No, just
education a government function.
We are not here to fund people.
Is education a government function?
To be on the internet so they can
We
watch.
don't need a school board.
We're banning
What Toby said, we don't need a school board.
No,
is education a government function?
Education is a government function.
Then we're done. Then the answer is, if you want to better
Here's
education,
what you need to do.
you know
You
for a
need to pick
fact,
up-
counsel,
you need to pick up
counsel,
books. Pick up books.
counsel.
Read books.
You have
Read
lost the
books.
argument.
You don't need the bloody internet. And if
I
you're
mean, the
falling
internet
behind,
is the
it's because
primary
you're not
way
reading
that
your
people
book.
get information now.
Yeah.
The information flows into our homes via the internet, via some kind of cable or signal. The school used to be the most informative part of a kid's day when 98% of workers worked on farms 120 years ago. Now school is, some teacher talking to you for an hour is you get a lot less information than you get from working your device.
No, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
but it's not a government function. To
If
give people
education
internet
is a
access.
government
that is a private
function,
industry function. And
if
if you
education
live
is a
in
government
Podunk,
function,
Kansas, and you're falling
should the
behind,
here's
there's
a question,
2 words for that,
counsel.
Jacoby.
Here's a question,
Too
counsel.
bad.
Here's a question,
Move
counsel.
to a place where you can get
If the
better internet
education is a
connection.
function of the government, if education
No.
is a function of the government,
Education is
we've already
not
agreed on
providing
that,
internet
so
to
there's
every
no
Podunk.
argument.
No.
I don't know what the argument is for, but if education is a function of the government, should the government improve our education system?
Yes, of course.
So if we should improve the education system and the government finds, just like we talked about flip-flop before, if the government finds a way to improve the education system for the betterment of the people, should it take that on to improve the betterment of the people?
It's
Well,
a cost-benefit analysis.
On that note, it's time to wrap things up and everything. So
it's like saying, I'm going to provide a Harvard education for everybody. If you're Joe Biden, Harvard education is free for everybody.
If the government,
a shared knowledge base knits America together.
No.
America is frayed now because we have different like sets of basic knowledge, half of which is bullshit. So,
and on that note, we've got to wrap up, and maybe tomorrow we can talk about some solutions for Haiti, which they're in all kinds of crisis, and they got their gangs taken over. So maybe we'll have some thoughts around that. But right now, it's time to wrap up, and we'll be back on tomorrow on Friday with another edition of World Edition. But another great conversation, and look forward to seeing y'all, good folks, on later on. Even though I'll be seeing Sasha later on, as we'll be pre-recording the chess show and all along those lines. So looking forward to seeing him at 12 o'clock. But right now, we're ready to get on out of here.